Okay. It illustrates the fact that we've got a Node.js application here with multiple services, microservices. So there's accounts, inventory, products, and reviews, and each one of them is run separately. As you can see down here, we've got ports 4001, 2, 3, and 4 as separately running guys. I can click on one of those. Let's see here, which one is products? Well, it goes in order, whatever it is. But I think. Right, so this will show like we've got a product here with weight, price, and all this kind of stuff. This is a separate service, right? If I go to a different tab and open up port 4003, we have a completely different schema here with attributes, and this is our entire Magento schema loaded up. So the point of this demonstration is to show the gateway, which is hiding all of those services underneath. And this is going to, that changed recently? Sorry, wasn't really expecting to do this right away. I think I've got some code in here that needs to be changed. Nope. Yeah, I don't know what branch I'm on right now. Sorry, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this, so he was just asking me like 10 minutes ago. So I don't know what environment I don't have set up right now, but.
Do you have a document on it yet?
Yeah, I definitely have the document from the Magento architecture, so let me do that. Right, so this document pretty much ended at the resolution point right here, and then I added the pull gateway and everything underneath it. So it just illustrates the fact that we can have a gateway that has multiple services running underneath the hood. And if we want, we can also, we can run local GraphQL files too, which is probably what my environment's doing right now. So I just need to go back and commit. But yeah, these are just local files that I can load up, and then it shares those schemas together, merges them together. And so illustrating the point is one thing, but I wanted to point out too that, like, you know, once we introduce this type of an architecture, it's very complex. There's a lot of points of failure that can happen. So we need to be really mindful about how we serve it, how we deploy it, and also how we change services after the fact. If we want to just deploy one separate microservice by itself, you know, what does that mean for the gateway? We have to restart it at some point. Is there going to be downtime? You know, so there's some tooling around that we need. There's definitely some products available from the Flow group that would allow us to do exactly that. But they're all like paid for services. So to the extent that we want to actually do that and pay for it, that's one thing. But I think we might also want to explore how difficult are the things that we want to do. Maybe we can roll our own if we want to. Just depends on what we want to spend our resources on. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple proof of concept that was given here, but the next step is going to be to prove the extensibility aspect of it, right? Because we've got this loader, for example, doing a SQL query. We've got Elasticsearch in a completely different service, but this is a SQL query in JavaScript, and so we want to actually be able to extend that query and pretty much anything to install like a Magento extension and override whatever or extend whatever we want. So that's what's next online for this one. Any questions?
I believe the main point of this session was to show that Apollo Federation can work with properly configured GraphQL backends, and we were able to demonstrate that you can extend one query from another service. So that was the main point.
Which we absolutely can. So.
And it doesn't matter what language GraphQL backend is written in. It can be Node.js, it can be PHP. As soon as it complies with Apollo Federation application, it will work with Apollo Gateway.
All right, so this one's actually an example of it actually working. I just had to stash my changes, but this is the gateway returning products from our Magento schema. That's one thing, right? But it's happening from the gateway is the important part. It's not happening from the individual services underneath it. Anyway, I think we can move on to the next one. You can stop sharing.
Okay. Yeah, let's see.
Can you stop sharing? Switch screen.
No, you need blue jeans.
I'm just gonna hang out.
The red one. Okay, in front of you. Okay, I still don't see Michael. I'll ping him. Maybe Alana, you can go on with your topics. Yeah, both ones.
I'll share my screen. So the first one is the use of helpers in templates. This is a proposal from Raul. He's a community member and Magento maintainer. The idea behind this is that right now in the core Magento we have a lot of code with like block helper inside this helper inside phpdoc templates. The last recommendation I've heard is that instead of helpers, we should introduce view model and then like call whatever we need from the view model. He already implemented sniff for this. So like instead of helper, please use view model. The only concern I have regarding this is that there was a discussion around marking view models with API tag. Mm-hmm. In this case, like we cannot introduce new view model and refactor the old code. So basically, we want to understand if it's a valid recommendation right now for refactoring, for new code and for refactoring the old one. Mm-hmm. Maybe who can provide some like information regarding view models? Do you have like maybe you had already discussions about this?
I don't know. I think even Jean at some point. I think we need to move on with view models recommendation. Mm-hmm. The only concern that we had is kind of more about forward compatibility, but based on our recommendations on how people should declare dependencies, it shouldn't be a problem. About marking with that API, again, we will need to agree at which point we mark new models with that API, and I think we can introduce new ones. It shouldn't be a problem. They are not interfaces, so they are not expected to be extended.
Okay, so
Oh yeah, exactly.
Okay, so do you think, do we need this additional check for this helper usage in the templates? Because it might be useful for extension developers, for new code definitely, but for old code when we will need to or skip or suppress.
I think that's what you wanted to have. We already had some discussion with
we've had we already have checked that it verifies that inside the PHTML templates we use block instead of this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first one, and this is like another one check to discourage the use of helpers.
No, I think we probably need to move to view model. We can sync with Eugene later also. Any other opinions?
Okay, I'll ask him also about this.
But I think we need to move. It would be good to have this check.
Okay. And can I move to the next?
Yeah, let's go.
It's about phpdoc blocks formatting. Recently, if you remember, we merged improvement from v9 to our documentation regarding phpdoc blocks, and we started with community implement new checks to comply with this standard. We started with constants. We already have this rule, and the next one is for classes and interfaces. We have pull request here, and again, I have one concern here. The rule says that in case if phpdoc block doesn't have any additional information, so in this case we need to omit this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show examples.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this part will cause. Do you see my screen? Or
maybe if you can zoom a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this part will cause will raise a warning because it's just the duplication of the class name, the same here. But the main question is if we do not add any additional PHP, if it's missing, we do not raise a warning. Is it expected behavior? Because it may lead to the situation when developers will they know that it will not raise a warning, so no PHP block added.
Mm-hmm.
So are we okay with this?
Yes, the idea was that if you will be forcing people to write the blocks, they will just write useless blocks, the blocks.
Okay.
I don't know, other opinions or.
In this case, we implemented as expected. Yeah, I just want to confirm that this case is okay.
We have another test, right? I don't know what's with that test that we had.
We want to replace it.
I believe it's outdated and it is not currently running, right?
It is right. It
is added on top of.
So you are replacing it with the sniff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously, if we change requirements, we have to modify that. The question: how do we change requirements? And is it correct that we change it to allow empty? Because it's difficult to track.
I don't remember what was in the nice
the
document.
I have a comment, yes, from it.
Can we also? I didn't see there that we prohibit comments like class, word class and class name.
Yeah, it is like we check this. Yes. Here is the text from documentation. classes and interfaces should have a short description that is human understandable, attention on the class. If the short description adds no additional information, so the short description not there. If like it's by design and what we expect, so I will continue with this approach.
Okay.
Great. Thanks. That's it from me.
Okay, then Michael, can you?
Oh, sure. I'm just going to share screen. So what I have for y'all today is just a quick overview on the HLD for JS compatibility checker for the AMD modules marked with @API. There's still some questions left to be answered, but for now I'm just going to share what I have in terms of result from the spike. So we have a list of compatibility rules for JavaScript within our current code base. And I've made some modifications to it, and I have pushed a PR to DevDocs to remove JavaScript interface, since we currently don't support interface, since we don't rely on TypeScript. And we changed the name from class to module, since we don't use classes. That's a ES6 syntax, and realistically, JavaScript don't really have classes. We have prototypal inheritance that's sugar-coated to look like classes. So in our case, we're mostly just modules. Just made minor modifications, and then just left little notes on what we can test and what we need more additional research to see if we can test, mostly events. So having a little issue understanding how we can actually test that. Added additional test cases where we are testing new last method arguments, etc. Aside from that, so it's some clarity on JavaScript implementation in Magento core. Pretty much what I just said, that we don't use interface nor classes. We use AMD modules via require.js. Yeah, and the only place we do actually have interface and class is actually in the page builder module, which uses TypeScript, which just a superset of JavaScript for if you're unaware of. Let's see. So what can we check? Well, currently we can check for add and removing classes, in this case modules, add and removal of methods, and add and removal of arguments. And these are for automated testing, not for manual testing. You can always manually check any of these. So some of the toolings in order to do this implementation, we're using Node as a runtime for JavaScript, and using Acorn, which is a AST walker for AST, which is pretty much just allows us to statically analyze JavaScript code. Acorn walk, which allows us to traverse the actual AST, and then FS and path modules just for us to actually do the file traversal and reading of the files. PHPs, on the PHP side, we have the SVC module that's already been split off, which is really nice because that allows us to extend it much more easily without affecting core code. So right now the idea is more along the lines of writing a node script using Acorn, have Acorn pull all the files from either being fed in from the SVC module, or we actually just send it the file path and have it fetch all the files and only statically analyze JavaScript files, and then just return either the implementation detail is still up to debate. It's more of how whomever is going to develop the PHP side how they want to actually implement the input and output for the node script. So the input can go anywhere from giving just a file path and then let the node script to fetch the file go through the file system themselves, or have it just automatically pass in one file at a time and then have the node script analyze it. So there's still a lot up to debate. Would have liked if Andrew Levine could join us.
I think he's online.
I'm here.
So any comments to everything? So as I understand, there are several things. First thing, updating of documentation about what is API and breaking change, and second is about implementation of the static check, right?
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Based on what we discussed in the meeting about this, I think it was a week or two ago. This all looks really good to me. Yeah, I mean this looks pretty much just like what we had discussed.
Have you considered using TypeScript as to generate the AST instead of Acorn?
I have not taken that into consideration.
Might be interesting because Acorn was developed in like 2012. It might not be supported as well in the future. I don't know. You might get better results with TypeScript as a parser for that.
Acorn's got plenty of support. It's what Webpack and Parcel and all the build tools use as a parser.
Okay.
Definitely don't mind adding that to additional spike. So I'll probably just look into it some more, determine if it's a better solution or not for our use case.
Okay.
Any questions?
None from me. That looks great.
No, cool. Looks good. Okay, thank you then. Okay, let's see. I think we only have my topic, the last one for today. It's about translations in di.xml. So there is some confusion, in my opinion, right now in how we handle translatable strings in di.xml comparing to, let's say, layout and UI, like to layout XML files or other XML files. The confusion is that currently for layout we support translate attribute, and it means that the string provided will be translated and it will be collected by the translation tool, while in di.xml we have a similar attribute which is called translatable, and in my opinion it's a little bit confusing, and we already have one file which is declared incorrectly because of very similar attribute names, I think. So translatable in di.xml works a little bit differently. It doesn't provide translated string to the application, but it just indicates to the translation tool that this string should be collected. The idea is that the code that uses this string should handle the translation by itself. So I don't know, I think it may lead to mistakes in the code and some bugs in the future because of the very similar attributes while the behavior is different. So what I propose is to change it back, like to change this attribute to translate as well, so it will be the same, and to make the behavior the same as in layouts. So it should be translated. The only problem with di.xml is that it can be loaded, for example, in global area, and there may not be a context for translation. In that case, I suggest to just return original string. Any opinions about that? I might probably need to look into whether it's even possible at all, because it depends on when di.xml is really loaded and merged. Yes.
I don't like this approach at all because it's absolutely different layers. So di is application level, layout update is view level. It's why it's work absolutely proper in current implementation. So in di you need translatable only to collect phrases, but you don't need to translate it because it can be in different layer of application. But in layout, we know that it's view level where translations is needed. So current implementation absolutely work proper for me, and I don't think we need to change its behavior.
I think it will be still confusing for developers if they know that there is translate attribute there and translatable here. So they may not expect that the phrase should be translated. And what I see in the code is that, yes, there is translatable attribute declared, but then the phrase was not translated. So I'm not sure how we should solve that. I agree that we should
Let's just write article to describe behavior and why it's done in this way, and I will help.
To do what?
Write article.
But the problem is not about articles. It can be written in documentation, but it's how people intuitively feel about behavior, I think. If it's called very similar, and I think that many people would expect that they behave in the same way.
So you propose to remove translatable but keep translate. Why wouldn't we do opposite? Keep translatable and remove translate.
It's not removing. So in layout we have translate, in DI we have only translatable. So I propose to have same name and same behavior. But yeah, I agree there is this problem that DI is a little bit different application layer, and it may be inappropriate for it to handle translations. I just see that there can be problems in the future due to mistakes of how the system behaves of understanding this.
So I missed. You propose to keep translate and its current behavior.
There is no translate in di.xml right now.
You propose to add it.
Yes.
And it would not have a translate. It will not be translating.
No, it should be translating if it can.
Because this is behavior of layout in layouts. In layouts, in addition to collecting, it also allows translation.
I don't think that you can implement it because DI load on early steps of Magento where many configurations not available. So it's even hard to implement in proper way.
It can be. Maybe it can be delayed to providing this, but yeah, I agree.
I still don't see a reason for that.
The reason is that we already have a use case where it's not used correctly.
Find people where to write it and learn how to write proper way.
But do we just have one solution proposed, or we have the alternative one?
No, we don't have alternative.
Because currently, if you consider the alternative approach, so that if we say that translatable is good to have for application layer, like for DI configuration, and translate is good to have for layout, so probably we need to fix our static test, because currently the translatable phrase which will be passed for DI would be called into __ function as a variable, and currently we are throwing a notice or warning or whatever in our static test where we pass the variable to the __ translate function. So that we somehow need to make this tool more clever to realize that this is a desirable state, or just drop this rule at all.
Once again, the last sentence, to drop what?
Yeah, to drop this restriction that we are not allowed to pass variable into underscore function.
But then it will be a problem in other places.
Yeah, so then maybe another problems may appear where the variables is passed not the way not the way it's gonna be. So
should we consider, I don't know, that we should not even provide strings in di.xml that should be translated? What other ways can be?
we already have one, especially for.
Yeah, we have usages. I'm just thinking if we just a little bit strange that we provide the string there that needs to be translated.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's analyze all the translatable usages or translate usages in our DI, and
so I don't know. Do we need to look into fixing static tests? Because I think if we just fix it generically, it will cause other problems.
Yeah, it would be almost impossible to do it properly.
Okay.
So probably the easiest way is to consider why we at all pass the translatable string in DI, and why at all the application logic should be aware of whether the string is translatable or not.
So one of the cases that I have is options for select.
So we can introduce a limitation that it should be done in the code. So because
but then it will not be extensible. I mean, you can probably still do it through plugin.
Yeah, you can do it through plugins.
But we have these two options. Yeah.
Yeah, for options, I believe we previously have discussions that we need to remove this functionality from DI and move it to separate config.
Yeah.
Because it's common functionality, and for option, we need just introduce new option config that will be specific for this.
Currently, I see just 46 matches for the translatable. So that probably we can deal with that.
Okay, I can look into options and into users.
And actually, the biggest problem is the analytics class, because in the analytics there are like 22 usages for the translatable in one class.
So theoretically, we can move some of this configuration into separate file, which can be translatable, probably. Okay. Then I think that's all for today. Anything else that somebody wants to discuss? And then that's all.